Start with a fact about your brain that is easy to say and almost impossible to actually hold in your head. Your brain has never seen the world. Not once. Not for a second. It sits in a sealed box of bone, in complete darkness and complete silence. It has never seen light. It has never heard a sound. Everything it will ever know about the outside arrives the same way, as small electrical pulses, traveling along nerves. And here is the thing that matters. Those pulses do not arrive labeled. There is no signal that says, this one is red. This one is your mother's voice. This one is danger. And the signals are worse than unlabeled. They are ambiguous, fundamentally. Not because your eyes are poor, because of geometry. A small patch of light on your retina could be a small thing close by, or a large thing far away. Exactly the same patch. Nothing in the signal tells you which. So you have a sealed organ receiving unlabeled, ambiguous pulses and somehow producing this, a world, in color, in depth, solid, continuous, out there, and produced with total confidence. You are not experiencing an interpretation, you are experiencing a room, which is exactly the problem. Because that gap between what actually arrives and what you experience has to be filled by something. And it is not filled by the world, it is filled by your brain making a guess, a very fast, very old, very good guess. And the whole of this episode is about what happens when you take that sentence seriously. The first person to say this clearly was a German physicist and physician, Hermann von Helmholtz, writing in the 1860s. He was a serious man. He measured the speed of a nerve impulse. He invented the instrument that lets a doctor look into your eye. He was not given to mysticism. And he concluded that perception could not possibly be reception, that what you see must be the product of something he called unconscious inference. An inference, a conclusion, drawn from evidence, except that you never see the evidence, and you are never present for the reasoning. You only ever receive the verdict. And for a century and a half that stayed a philosopher's point. Then neuroscience caught up with it, and the modern version has a name, predictive processing, and a phrase from the neuroscientist Anil Seth that is either the best or the worst description in the field, depending on how carefully you read it. He calls perception a controlled hallucination, and I want to plant a flag on one of those words immediately, because we are going to need it at the end. Controlled. That word is doing enormous work. Do not let it go past. This is not a claim that nothing is real. It is not a claim that you are making it up. It is a claim about the direction the work is being done in. Because the naive picture, the one you have been carrying your whole life, is that the world comes in through your senses and assembles a picture, and you look at it. Predictive processing says that is almost exactly backwards. The picture is not being assembled from the outside in. It is being generated from the inside out. Your brain is not waiting to be told what is there. It already has a guess. It has always had a guess. And the senses do something much stranger than telling it. And there is an anatomical fact that makes this concrete, and it surprises people who assume the eyes are in charge. If you count the connections in the visual system, the wiring running from the higher areas back down toward the sensory ones, vastly outnumbers the wiring running the other way. Read that as an engineer would. The main traffic is not coming up from the eyes. The main traffic is going down toward them, which is not how you would build a camera, but it is precisely how you would build a machine, that is, guessing. So here is the arrangement. The higher levels send down a prediction. This is what I expect the next moment to look like. The sensory levels receive the actual signal and compare. And what travels back up is mostly not the picture. It is the discrepancy, the part the prediction got wrong, the error. And that is an enormously efficient design, because most of the time the prediction is right. You walk into your own kitchen, and almost nothing needs to be sent upstairs. It is all as expected, which is why familiar places feel like nothing. You are barely perceiving them. You are mostly remembering them and checking. And then something is moved. A chair is somewhere new, and it leaps out at you with an intensity completely out of proportion to a chair. That intensity is the error signal. That is what surprise physically is. It is the sound your model makes when it is wrong. So sit with the inversion for a second, because everything after this depends on it. You do not see the world and then form expectations about it. You expect the world and see the parts where your expectation failed. Perception is not a photograph arriving. It is a hypothesis being checked. Now, assertions are cheap, so here are the demonstrations. And the good ones share a property. They still work, after you know exactly how they work. Which is itself the finding. You cannot correct these with knowledge, because the guess is not being made by the part of you that has the knowledge. Start with hearing. In 1976, two researchers filmed a mouth saying one syllable and dubbed a different syllable onto the soundtrack. And what people report hearing is neither. It is a third syllable, one that was never spoken and was never recorded and does not exist on the tape. Close your eyes and you hear what was recorded. Open them and the sound changes. Not your opinion about the sound, the sound. Your visual system voted on what you heard, and it outvoted your ears. Because the brain is not reporting the audio, it is reporting its best guess about what was said. Now vision, and this one is going to matter enormously in about 10 minutes. Take a mask, turn it around, look at the inside, the hollow side. You will not see a hollow, you will see a normal face, pushing out toward you. And as you move, it will appear to turn and follow you. And your eyes are not failing here. Your stereo vision is delivering perfectly good depth information, saying clearly, this surface goes away from you. And that information is being overruled, because your brain holds an extremely strong prior about faces, built from every face you have ever seen, and every one of them stuck out. Faces are convex. That is not negotiable. So the system does something remarkable. It weighs a lifetime of faces against the last half second of your eyes, and it throws away the eyes. And you are not consulted. You do not experience a decision. You experience a face. And a third, which you can run right now. Try to tickle yourself. You cannot. Nobody can. And the reason is exactly the same machinery. When you move your own hand, your brain sends a prediction of what that will feel like and subtracts it from what arrives. What you feel is only the leftover. And when you do it yourself, there is almost no leftover. Which means the difference between a touch that tickles and a touch that does not is not in the touch at all. It is in whether it was predicted. Someone else's hand is unpredictable. Yours is not. And your nervous system quietly removes everything it saw coming. And now the cleanest example of all, and the one people find hardest to accept. Color. Because there is no color out there. None. Light has a wavelength, which is a number, a length. That is the entire physical property. Redness is not in the light. It is not on the surface of the apple. It is not a property of the world that your eye collects, the way a thermometer collects temperature. It is a label, generated inside you, and attached to a wavelength, because it was useful to your ancestors to be able to tell one thing instantly from another. And here is the proof that color is constructed rather than measured, and you rely on it every day without noticing. Take a white shirt into a room lit by a warm lamp. The light physically bouncing off that shirt is now strongly orange. Measure it. It is orange. And you see a white shirt in slightly warm light. Your visual system did a calculation. It estimated the color of the illumination, subtracted it, and reported the shirt. It handed you a conclusion about the object, not a measurement of the light. And that is not a flaw. That is the entire point. You do not need to know what wavelengths are arriving. You need to know whether that is the same shirt you saw this morning. Which is why people can look at the same image and genuinely, not politely, genuinely see different colors. Their systems made different assumptions about the light. And both of them are seeing the output of a calculation rather than the thing itself. So when you say the world is colorful, what you are actually reporting is that your brain is running an old, superb, entirely internal system for labeling surfaces. The color is not out there waiting for you. You are the only place in the universe where it exists. So now, the turn. Because there is a word we have been circling, and it is time to deal with it properly. Hallucination. We treat that word as the opposite of perceiving. Perception is contact with reality. Hallucination is the failure of it. Two different things happening to two different kinds of people. And in this framework, they are not two things. They are one machine with the correction turned up or turned down. Normal perception is a guess being firmly corrected by sensory evidence, moment to moment. That correction is what the word controlled is doing in controlled hallucination. Weaken that correction and the generator keeps running. It does not stop producing a world. It produces one that is no longer being checked as tightly against the evidence, which is the same mechanism you use to see this room, running with less correction. Not a different faculty, a dial. And there is one study that makes this uncomfortably concrete. In 2009, researchers put people in a scanner and showed them those hollow masks. 16 healthy volunteers and 13 people with schizophrenia. A small study, hold it loosely, but the numbers are stark. The healthy volunteers saw the illusion, a normal face where there was a hollow, about 99% of the time, which is to say, essentially always. The patients saw it about 6% of the time. The rest of the time they simply saw what was actually in front of them, a hollow mask. So take those two numbers seriously for a moment. On that one task, the people we describe as detached from reality were the accurate ones, and the rest of us saw a face that was not there, and the imaging suggested why. In the healthy volunteers, the top-down traffic increased when the hollow face appeared. The prediction was being pushed down hard to override the eyes. In the patients, that increase did not happen. The prediction did not come down with the same force. So the evidence got through. And now I have to be extremely careful because this finding gets misused constantly. This is one narrow perceptual task. It is not a claim that schizophrenia grants clearer sight. The same patients are more susceptible to other illusions. And the condition itself is a serious, often devastating illness, not an alternative way of knowing. Nothing here is romantic. I am not offering it as one. What it does show, with unusual clarity, is the machinery. Because the difference between those two groups was not sharper eyes. It was how heavily the guess was allowed to overrule them. Which means the confidence you feel that you are simply seeing what is there is not evidence that you are. It is what a strong prediction feels like from the inside. Now turn the whole apparatus around. Because everything we have said applies to the world outside you, and the same machine is pointed inward. Your brain is sealed away from your own body as well. It does not have direct access to your stomach, or your heart, or your lungs. It gets signals, ambiguous ones, and it has to guess. So consider a very ordinary experience, a tightness in your chest, a raised heart rate, a slight churn in the stomach. What is that? Physiologically, that same bundle could be fear, or excitement, or 3 cups of coffee, or the beginning of an illness, or love. The raw signal does not specify. So the same process runs. Your brain takes the bodily signal, combines it with the situation and with everything that has happened to you before, and issues its best guess. And the guess arrives as a feeling, not as a hypothesis, not as an interpretation you could examine, as a fact about yourself. I am anxious. I am in love. I am fine. And this explains something people find genuinely confusing about themselves. Why the same physical state, before an exam and before a stage you actually want to walk onto, can be dread in one case and thrill in the other. Same heart, same hands, different prediction about what it means. And you experience the prediction, not the heart. And it explains something harder. Anxiety, in this framework, is partly a prediction problem. A system predicting threat will read ordinary bodily noise as evidence of threat. And the reading itself produces more of exactly that noise, which then confirms the prediction. That is not a person being irrational. That is a loop with a bad prior in it. And then the last and strangest extension, which I will hand over carefully. If the world is a guess, and the body is a guess, then what about the one doing the guessing? Because the sense of being a continuous someone, sitting behind your eyes, is also constructed. It is a model too, very good, very stable, and built the same way as the room, which does not make you less real. A model of a thing that exists is not a fiction, but it does mean that the solidity you feel, the sense of a fixed self looking out at a fixed world, is not the ground floor of anything. It is the top floor. It is the most polished output of a machine that never once got to look outside. And now the most important section of this episode, because this idea is stolen constantly and used to say things it does not say. So let us be extremely precise about the limits. First and largest, this is not a claim that reality is not real. There is a world. It is entirely indifferent to your model of it, and it corrects you constantly, which is precisely why the correction exists at all. Guess wrong about the step, and the world informs you immediately. The whole architecture only makes sense because something out there keeps refusing to agree with you. Second, and this one is sold to people for money. This is not you create your own reality. Not in that sense. You cannot choose your predictions. They were built over decades by statistics your brain gathered without asking you, and they update only when the evidence forces them to. If wanting were enough, the hollow mask would stop working the moment I told you it was hollow. Try it. It does not. Third, the theory itself. Predictive processing is influential. It is not settled. It is a framework rather than a finished result, and serious people argue about how much of perception it really explains. I have given you the strongest version of it, because it is the interesting version, but do not walk away thinking this is closed. It is a live argument. And fourth, which matters more than the other three put together. If any part of this episode has landed somewhere uncomfortable, if the world has been feeling thin lately, unreal, as though you were watching it rather than in it, then please hear this clearly. That is not this. That is not an insight arriving. Persistent feelings of unreality, of detachment from yourself or the world, have names. They are recognized, they are common, and they are treatable. So if that is where you are, a philosophy essay is the wrong tool, and a doctor is the right one. That is not surrender, and it is not weakness. It is the correction loop, working exactly as designed. You noticed the model had drifted, and you went to get evidence. That is the most clear-headed thing anybody in this episode has done. So, what is usable here? And there is one thing, and it is not small. Priors can be rebuilt, slowly, but they can. That is what learning physically is in this picture. Not adding facts to a store, changing what you expect so that the same signal arrives meaning something different. And this is exactly what expertise is. The radiologist does not have better eyes than you. The mechanic does not hear more of the engine than you do. They have a better model, which means the same signal arrives already sorted. They are not looking harder. They are predicting better. And the shadow of that is worth naming plainly, because a prejudice is the same object. A strong prior about a kind of person that arrives before the evidence and colors what you then perceive. The only structural difference between expertise and prejudice is whether the model is still updating. One is a prediction that keeps checking itself. The other is a prediction that stopped, which gives you the practical move, and it is almost embarrassingly small. Learn to notice surprise. Not the big surprises, the tiny ones. The half-second where somebody did not behave the way you assumed, where the thing you were sure about turned out slightly otherwise. That flicker of friction, because that flicker is the only moment your model is open. It is the error signal arriving, and everything you have ever actually learned came in through that door. And what most of us do with it is close it. We explain the surprise away. We call the person an exception. We were basically right. And the model stays exactly as it was. So the discipline is simply to stay in it a second longer. To let being wrong about something small actually register before you tidy it away. That is not humility as a virtue. It is maintenance. You are the only person who can service this instrument, and surprise is the only tool that fits. And that brings us back to the sealed box in the dark. You have never once seen the world. You have only ever seen your brain's best guess about it, and the whole of your life has happened inside that guess. And I want to leave you somewhere steady with that, because it is not a frightening fact. Look around the room you are in. It is still there. It will still be there tomorrow. The chair holds you. The world answers when you push it. What has changed is only this. That room did not walk into you through your eyes. Something in the dark built it, out of guesses, in milliseconds, and it has been doing that flawlessly for every waking second of your life, and has never once asked for credit. See what people hide, even from themselves.